Hi, everyone, and welcome to another Roofing Contractor Walls and Ceilings Legal Insight. I'm Roofing Contractor Editor Art Eisner, and I really appreciate you joining us, whether it's by video or as part of our podcast. As always, I'm honored to be joined by our legal expert, Trent Cotney of Adams and Reese. Trent, as always, glad you're here to walk us through some of those big issues affecting roofers and other contractors around the country. Welcome.
Art, it's great to be here. Yeah, we got a lot to talk about.
All right. Well, it seems like we could do an entire series on legal issues emerging from your home state of Florida that are impacting contractors. But the state does tend to be a bellwether for other markets around the country, right? So, let's dive into what's happening. Just this week, the Florida legislature was in a special session to debate some insurance bills that would do a lot of things, including ease some requirements for replacing damaged roofs. What do contractors need to know?
Yeah, so this came quickly. This special session was, obviously the insurance lobby pushed hard for these, Senate bills that directly impact restoration contractors, roofing contractors that look to do insurance type work. And there were a lot of different components into this. A lot of this is still being fleshed out. We're working on a more detailed article on it, given that it just happened. But some of the most interesting components that I saw is that in the state of Florida, if you are doing repairs to a roof that would be more than 25% of that roof, then there's a requirement that you replace the roof. And that has been sort of a thorn in the side of insurance companies because it is basically, requiring a lot of new roofs to be replaced when there are storms. So as I understand it, what this bill says, and this was Senate Bill 4D, what it said basically is it opened the door to less costly repairs, provided that the rest of the roof surface still meets code requirements. So for our listeners that don't know, Florida has a very robust code, the Florida Building Code. It also has a special segment if you are in a hurricane zone, the high velocity hurricane zone requirements, all of which are pretty rigorous. But it did ease that sort of threshold requirement, which is going to make it more difficult to obtain a full roof replacement. The other things that were interesting, Art, is they continue to cut away against the ability to do assignment of benefits in the state of Florida. It's not impossible, but there are a significant amount of hoops that need to be jumped through. And the last thing that's really interesting is they're making it more difficult for plaintiffs' lawyers to take on these insurance type cases against homeowners to kind of recoup lost payments and against insurance companies to obtain the payments that are due. So very interesting there because, look, everybody hates lawyers, right, Art? So the idea there is that if you take away the ability to get your attorney's fees or reduce the multipliers that you can get, then that decreases the incentive to file these types of claims against insurance companies, thereby sort of making it more difficult to get insurance proceeds on these roof type projects. Clearly, it's still waiting the governor's signature on both the bills that were passed. I do anticipate that there's going to be some legal challenges from a variety of, maybe industry or others that are affected by the bills. So remains to be seen, but clearly this is big news. It directly affects those in the restoration business.
Trent, great breakdown. I was going to ask if there was really any robust debate or if really, the legislature showed that there was a lot of influence from the insurance industry, and that's what won the day.
So yeah, the bills were both approved with an overwhelming majority, and there was actually a lot of industry support for the bills as well. On the retail side. So I think the biggest issue is that the insurance rates in Florida continue to skyrocket, and whether or not that's a cause of these issues is something that can be debated. But I think there was a lot of consumer push behind it, as well as insurance and some industry groups as well that were interested in seeing these things get passed. So there are some bad actors out there in the restoration market. Not all of them. Clearly, tons of reputable contractors that do work all the time. But I think that a lot of the impetus for these bills was targeted based on those few bad actors and it pushed through. Again, we're not at the finish line yet. So as we've seen with previous bills like this, oftentimes there can be changes or legal challenges to it. But as it stands right now, this is a pretty big deal. I've been following it. I think there's some good things that came out of this legislation, but we'll see what the finished product looks like.
Yeah, I also saw that part of this legislation included an additional state-backed catastrophe reinsurance fund.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what is reinsurance, first of all, and then can any of this help contractors?
Yeah. So reinsurance is basically so Florida, nobody wants to provide property insurance in the state of Florida because of hurricanes, right? So there was a period of time back, probably 15 years ago where you could barely get any insurance companies to come into the state because of the losses. So several insurance companies went bankrupt, and if they go bankrupt, you need to have reinsurance for the purposes of making sure that guarantee is backed. So through these bills, they created additional funding to help support and offset, potential liability. What that does is it eases some of the concerns of, the insurance companies that are coming in, and also eases the concerns of consumers knowing that there is something to fall back on, and it's not going to be a complete default by insurance companies that are hit with a significant amount of storm damage, which is absolutely likely. It's funny, Art. I was talking to a contractor that does a lot of storm work, very reputable. They're great people, and they were lamenting the fact that insurance rates have increased. I think we've all seen that. It doesn't matter where you are, whether it's Michigan or Florida. I don't know about you, Art. I just got my renewal, and I'm gonna have to get a second job. I don't know if Roofing Contractor Magazine's hiring, but it's gonna take a lot for me to pay that bill. So it's definitely a concern. I think there's a good middle ground between industry and insurance, and that's something that has always been a battle and will continue to be so.
All right. Well, we did talk about this potentially being a bellwether for other areas. Are there some other markets where you see something like this happening next? I know there's a lot of clamoring going on in Georgia. That's nothing new, but is that a spot, or where else do you see this happening?
Yeah. So I think the insurance companies love to use Florida as a test ground. So I do anticipate that if the next move for me, in my mind, for insurance companies would be probably a place like Georgia or Texas. Texas is a huge insurance market, as is Colorado. So if you're listening to this and you do storm and restoration work, it's something that you got to be mindful of. What comes out of California on the west or Florida on the east, it all moves over. And that's the key thing, is that this is not a Florida centric type bill that will ultimately maybe sign into law. It is something that you might have to worry about in the future. So, regardless of what side you're on, whether you're for it or against it, make sure that you're active and your voice is heard. There's nothing worse than leaving it up to politicians. Get your 2 cents in. It's very important.
All right. What else are you getting calls on, Trent?
Well, it's funny you mentioned calls, Art, because again, not to be overly Florida specific in this conversation today, but a lot of contractors out there use automated calling or use call services. And there's a Telephone Communications Protection Act, TCPA, that provides federal guidance on that says if you're on a do not call list, you can't call and you could be fined. But there were some recent cases that came out last year that kind of cut against that a little bit. What's interesting, Art, is that Florida has got a more robust provision. And basically, it doesn't matter whether you intended or didn't intend. If you're calling people that are either on the state or federal do not call list, regardless of whether you're in Florida or you're in Wyoming or you're in Utah or you're in Michigan or wherever you're at, if you're calling somebody in Florida, you could potentially be liable. Okay. And there is some potential for attorney's fees. So again, nobody likes lawyers. That's the issue. So this is something Georgia and the state of Washington are also currently looking at similar state laws. And this is something that I definitely think is going to be carried through. Plaintiffs' lawyers love these types of things, right? So that's why I'm concerned about it. I think roofing contractors should be concerned about it. All it takes is a slip up, and you're looking at fines, $500 to $1,500 per call. So something that you should definitely be aware of. Again, this is ebbing and flowing as well, but this did go into effect. So it is the law as we stand here today.
And now that you're about a year in to this process in Florida, are you hearing, is it affecting lead generation at all for contractors? Are they having, difficulty, or is it having that kind of chilling effect?
Yeah. So from a contractor standpoint, my I can tell you we have gotten a lot of calls where they are facing plaintiff's action based on violation of this, right? We've got a whole financial services team at our firm that handles a lot of these things.
Huh.
I think that from a contractor side, they're not aware of a lot of this. They just keep doing it business as usual. And part of the issue there is you really got to be taking extra steps and precautions and making sure if you're using a third party to do this service that they're reputable, they're reliable, they're taking these lists into account. It's not a free for all like it once was. So I get the impression, Art, that most contractors don't even know this thing exists, and that's why I'm trying to put more information out there on it.
All right. Well, yeah, you let us know. We'll help keep people in the know. Trent, where can people find out more?
Sure. Well, they can always hit me up at trent.cotney@arlaw.com or go to adamsandreese.com for more information.
All right. And before you check out Trent's website, while you're still on roofingcontractor.com, please be sure to sign up for our free e-magazine and e-newsletters so you can stay on top of the latest news and information. And for our walls and ceilings audience, please also visit wconline.com for comprehensive coverage of the interior construction industry. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.